Hey guys, how's it going out there? Welcome back to the old jet scale models. Today we're going to be taking our first look at the building and putting together of this Miniart P-47D. And it's a pretty detailed kit. And as I've not really built a P-47 since I was a kid, it's going to be an interesting journey of discovery. Okay, so let's get started with this P-47D. First up, we've got these two different type of seats. This one here has got the photo-etch seat belts, and this one has got the molded-in seat belts. I'm kind of leaning towards the molded-in seat belts, just because I think they might look more real. But we'll see. So that's on D and B. Here's the B. Now where's the D? From what I've seen, the Miniart kit comes with many options. For example, the pilot seat actually has two ways of adding the seat belts. One is using a molded in back and seat with the straps already injection molded, or you can use the PE provided straps. Now, in my experience, I really don't like photo etch for seat belts. It's good for a lot of things, but seat belts, I don't think they're that good. Not sure. There's a bit of like real minute flash around these parts here, and I just use glue sometimes to get rid of that stuff. Number one, they're hard to manipulate into the proper shape even if you anneal them. And for example, the one that comes with this Miniart, there's some such tiny ends, like the clips, they're so tiny that if you try to anneal this, if you're not careful, you could just burn that stuff up. So I chose not to anneal my photo etch here because there's some bits of it that are so fine. In any case, once you've bent it and you paint it and any other manipulating that you do after, what happens is the paint flakes off. You know, it's almost guaranteed. I've just never had good experiences using photo etch for seat belts. In any case, I've sort of wanted to build this from the box. I was thinking I could get some aftermarket seat belts, but I just want to kind of build this from the box and see what happens. So what I'm doing here is I'm folding over these two little strap holders, I guess, or I'm not sure what you would describe them, but they're like loops of fabric, and you have to bend them over. So that's what you see me doing here on the upper straps as well as the two side lap straps. All right, I'm going to try something to give this photo etch a bit of a tooth. I'm going to soak it in some vinegar, and I'm going to keep it in there for a few hours. And I'm going to see, because it's a mild acid, if it's going to actually maybe etch a little bit of a tooth in there so that the paint has something to grab onto. I won't leave it in there very long, like not overnight or anything like that. Maybe just a few hours, if that. I'll check it. I'm not going to commit at this point as to which is one I'm going to use, because there's only one bottom. There's two parts for the rest of it. So I'll get the part E21, which is the back for the photo etch version, and I'll see if I can get it to happen. Okay, I'm going to commit to using this seat. And I'm going to put it together so that it has a chance to set up before I start manhandling it. All right. All right, now we're going to be switching into working on the cockpit floor, the front wall, the side cockpit walls, and we'll be working on the seat. One thing I've found with Miniart model kits is that the tolerances are very, very tight. So it might behoove you to remove a little bit of the plastic to get those parts to slide in better. I should have taken more time to do that. But even just a quick scraping with a knife would help. So I've etched this with the what do you call it? Vinegar, and it looks pretty good. I think it's got something on it. Now with this photo etch, you have to bend over this strap part here. It's sort of like
6 out here, and then you fold it over. But the thing is, there's still a little piece right there that, using this pair of pliers to isolate that little part there, I'm able to bend it over okay, there. So there you go. Okay, taking a look, here's the main sort of like floor and front bulkhead. Or is that the rear bulkhead? I think that's the rear one. And here's the seat. Okay. All right. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to paint these, and we'll come back. Okay, so getting the other parts together for this cockpit. Check out that massive detail there. Here's the rudder pedals. And so we've got these parts, which are for getting the chair to sit in its proper place. So that goes in there. So these all have to get straightened a bit there. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, we're going to do a little chipping with these. So first off, I'm going to paint them with a silver color, and then I'll come back on top of it with a zinc chromate color, and we'll do a little bit of chipping on the floor, etc. All right, well, I've used this for my silver. All right, I'm going to let those dry really well. And I'm thinking I might give it a clear coat just to protect it. So when I go to do the primer color, it won't take away all the silver. Time to paint the seat belt. Okay, this is what I'm going to be using for painting the seat belts. So you can polish this stuff.
All right, let's take a look at the instrument panel. It looks pretty nicely detailed.
Alright, I've given these side pieces a second coat of the silver because I want this edge to look good. Alright, so I'm gonna get this chair in place, I think, at this point. Just because I don't want to wreck it. And if I can immobilize it, that might be good. All right.
So we're going to do some fancy paint chipping on the interior of this kit. So first of all, I've sprayed it with the silver color. Then I used a clear coat, a lacquer-based clear coat on top of that. And then I sprayed it, as you could see, with the Tresemme Hairspray. Just gave it a couple of light coats. And now what I'm doing is I'm using a Tamiya paint that is an acrylic that is mixed with water in this case, because I want the surface of the coat of paint to be weak. And if I use a lacquer base, thinner, it'll eat into the plastic more or eat into the subsequent layers underneath the substrate. And I don't want that. I want it to be able to fall away easily. So I just mix it with water, which is not a big deal. Then I spray light coats on top of that hairspray treated surfaces. I don't want to go too heavy because when I do that, it's going to be harder to come back in with the water and the brush and remove stuff. So keep that in mind. Don't get too heavy with the paint. Now that the zinc chromate color is on top of the silver, I'm going to take some water and I'm going to break down the paint surface a little bit and try and get some chips going where the natural metal comes through. Now, I don't want to go too crazy on this because I'm going for subtlety, and I don't want really big areas of silver. After I've completed this, I'll give it a clear coat, and then what I'll do is I'll spray it again with the hairspray and then hit it with the top coat. And then after that's dry, I'll come back again with some water and a paintbrush and break down that surface to expose both the metal color as well as the zinc chromate. So it does take a little bit of time to reactivate that hairspray. So while it looks like it's taking a long time here, you have to be careful not to use too much water, and basically what I'm doing is I put a little bit of water on and I work it in, and then over a relatively short period of time, that water will seep into the paint. It will reach the hairspray layer. Once it reaches the hairspray layer, what happens is the hairspray becomes reactivated because it's water-based, and it will start to unattach itself to the underlying layer of paint, in this case a silver paint. So the thing is like, you want to always have control over what you're doing. So you have to kind of go at it slow, and it might make for boring videos to watch this, but that's just how it is. And the thing is you have to keep in mind that you want your chips to be in scale. You don't want them to be really large chips if it's like, say, 1/48 scale airplanes or 1/35 scale tanks. You have to keep in mind that in scale, the chips would not be that big. For the most part. I mean, there may be special situations where you want to have large chips for whatever reason, but yeah, just go at it slow. Don't use too much water. I'm using some toothpicks here, but I don't resort to tools like that because I don't think that they give the authentic flaked off paint look that we're after here. Now, one thing I'm going to mention at this point, and it's kind of like hindsight is 2020, but after doing a little research, after I've already put the cockpit together at this point while I'm talking to you, I discovered that the P-47 seats were not made of metal. They were made of wood. So there should not be any metallic silver, and there also should not be any of the zinc chromate primer, because that zinc chromate primer is for metal. So the only thing that you would get is wearing off and chipping down to like a dirty wood look, right? So, lesson learned for my next P-47. Now that I've removed a bit of the zinc chromate primer, I'm going to spray it again with Hairspray, and now I'm going to use Tamiya XF5 as the interior green. I did a search online and I asked a question on a few forums, and you know what? Nobody could give me a answer as to what the color was on the inside. Everybody had a different opinion. And I'm just going to go with what Miniart suggests for Tamiya, and that is the XF5. Just going back in and hitting any areas where maybe I didn't quite get it the first go around. Now, I'm not putting on a really thick layer of paint here. I'm just trying to cover it as thinly as possible, but getting the full color up. So yeah, just don't lay it on too thick. I can see I really got to work on framing my videos. There's just, I apologize for all the really poor video on this video. So once again, we do the same process of slowly adding water and trying to have it get underneath the top coat and to come in contact with the hairspray. So again, this is a slow process, or it should be, and what you got to do is just take your time and don't go too fast, because you don't want really big chips. You want in-scale chips. So now I'm going to do a bit of a wash, and I'm going to try this track wash just to get into some of the areas where it'll bring out the detail. Also, it should give a nice sort of dirt look to some of the areas as well.
Oh, great.
I've taken a Q-tip or earbud and I put a little bit of paint thinner on there, as these washes from AK are oil based. So just to soak up any of the excess that's in the flat planes. And I try not to remove too much from in the recesses or around shapes, because that's what we want to highlight. We need to keep that stuff in there. But it's really good to remove any of the excess. Okay, now what you're about to see is I'm going to start doing a little bit of detail painting with some black. And I've got these wonderful water-based acrylic paints from AK and Vallejo, and they're very good for brush painting. It's a bit of a pain, though, trying to use them sometimes because the paint seems to dry out in the nozzle. And then you have to poke it with something, and then you get a big blurb of color that you don't really want. But beyond that, moaning and groaning, right now what I'm doing here is I'm painting what I've since learned is what they call the map case. And it's actually made out of aluminum, but there may be some kind of a fabric cover over it, I'm not sure. Or they just may paint it. But I've seen some work done on a rehabilitation of another P-47, and it appears that it's just, some tin that they've made into a map box with a lifting lid and a piano hinge. So that was that one. I'm going to try a different one now. So at this point, I grabbed some enamel-based silvery paint, and I used very, 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 very little, like atomically nano amount. And I just lightly dry brushed over some of the areas that maybe would benefit from having a little bit of a metallic sheen to them. So with that little tweak done, I'm going to glue in the rudder pedals at this point. Although later on they kind of came out and it wasn't a big deal. But yeah, you don't really need to glue them in. I just thought I would at this point, but in the final analysis, they just came out later on anyway. Now I am going to do the thing I really don't like doing the most, and that is working with these metallic seat belts. So they don't really give you an exact place to glue these on, so I took a stab at it. But as you'll see later, I had to lift this off and move it further down after looking at some photographs, which I should have done maybe before I stuck it down for the first time. So I'm just using some CA glue, and I'll put it down, and then I guess I'll try as gently as possible to shape these things and get them in place. But I ended up having to take it off, and that caused some paint to come off, and I ended up having to touch up a lot. I did do a little bit of extra stuff. I actually drilled out a couple of pinholes for adding a little bit of, some pins for the lap belts to hook into, because the ones that were supposed to be there on the seat, I don't know, maybe I sanded them off, or I don't know where they went, or maybe they weren't ever there, but in the illustration, they are there. So I ended up making my own, and and then I frustratingly dealt with trying to not wreck them as I installed the lap belts as well. You can see here I'm using a soft cotton bud to try and push those down into shape. I'm thinking now maybe I should have tried to anneal them, but like I say, there are some very fragile areas on these belts, like at the end of the seat belts where the clips are. Those are very fine and thin, and also in the middle where there's a couple of buckles. So I just didn't want to risk melting them. So I'm just using one of my homemade CA glue applicators, and I'm going to try and glue those down with as little glue as possible onto the seat, because they're not cooperating as far as just sitting naturally. So, and I don't know why I thought they would at some point, but As you can see, trying to get these metal stiff seat belts in position is a bit of a pain. I do believe I could have annealed them maybe. Like, maybe other people don't have as much problem with them, but I think I'm going to do the HGW seatbelts next time. I've actually ordered some last night, so that's how I'll do it next time. Alright, well, now it's time for those inevitable touch-ups when using metal for these seat belts. Fortunately, I'm okay with how everything came out, but there was a few moments where, you know, I got really frustrated with how it looked and I wasn't happy. But in the final analysis, when I came back to it a day later and looked at it, it didn't look too bad. You know, often with these kits when I'm building them, at a certain point after the storm has passed and I'm looking at them, I go, I wish I could start this again, knowing what I know now. But, you know, that's the reality of physics, is that you're not able to reconstitute a kit back to its original, you know, when you first open the box and crack the plastic and cut it off the sprue. I mean, I do that more often than I'd like, where I have to strip paint and repaint something, but it'll never be as it is when it's pristine, fresh out of the box. And I don't really have time left in my life to be building models twice if I'm ever going to get through even a small percentage of my kits in the stash. So at a certain point you have to just go, well, maybe it's not perfect, but maybe it's as good as it's going to get, and try to be happy with that, because there's no perfection, you know. I'm an artist from way back, and I learned that lesson early, is the only thing that is capable of making perfect things is, you know, the guy who created all of this stuff, so whoever that might be. Next up is I'm going to be making some spots where I can glue in some stretch sprue, which are going to act as pins where I can mount the photo-etch seatbelts, because there's no pins there that I can see. So just to make sure everything is in the right place. I don't want to put a big glob of glue there to put everything in place, so that's why I'm making these little pins. So now that I've stretched out the sprue, I'm just cutting off a little tiny piece to see if it will fit into the hole that is there in the photo etch for me to mount it to the seat. And I think it's going to work.
All right, so that's the right diameter. We've got part DB4 here, which I painted with black. That goes... That's weird.
I'm just adding part DB3 here. I haven't painted it black. It's just so small. I've chosen to glue it in and then I'll come back and brush paint it in place. So while I've kept busy doing other things, those pins that I made from the stretch sprue have had a chance to solidify somewhat. So now I'm going to stick on these lap belts. It was a bit challenging to get them on.
Of course I've got it backwards. Damn.
But I didn't lose it. I kept in the pocket and I was able to get them done. I think next time it might be better for me to work with the seat where it's not mounted on the floor yet.
All right. All right.
So this is a technique I've used for a pretty long time. It's good for sort of like making the end of a piece of sprue sort of a rounded rivet shape. And that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to put it on there, and then once it's on, I'll take the piece of incense.
Damn it. You guys think this is easy, eh? Watching all those videos people make, how many times do they screw up before they get it right? Come on! Okay.
I'll light it, and then I'll hold it really close to the piece of sprue, and it will slowly melt into sort of like a rounded crown, and it will expand enough to hold this seat belt in place. So as I go along here, I have to do some adjusting of the seat belts, and I've snipped off that one pin, taken off the excess now that it's solidified up. And now I'm going to thread the other side on, and I'll treat it in the same way with a piece of incense to melt a little bell end onto the little mushroom to keep it in place. Yeah, gravity wasn't really helping me on this situation, but I won out in the end. So now, using a cotton bud, I'm gently trying to shape this photo etch seatbelt into place, which is a little bit difficult because it's just so stiff. I'm inserting that wooden earbud just to give the seat some support while I put pressure on those metal seat belts to seat them down even better.
All right, that's it. Walking away. Touch up and moving on.
All right, guys, looks like we're going to have to wrap this one up. It's a mega episode, and I'm going to try and keep them to an hour. This one went a little bit longer, but I had to get to a certain point before I could cut it off. In any case, be sure to join me for the next exciting episode, which is coming as soon as I can get it edited. I'll put it up for you guys to check it out. It's a very intriguing episode, and it mostly will be focused on the instrument panel. All right, so in the meantime and in between time, that's another edition of Jet Scale Models. Y'all come back now, you hear?